Good morning and welcome to this week's IGTV. Are you noticing that you, as much as you want to connect with your teen, you just feel like your lips are like concrete, or there's like this anxiety and gross stuff coming up inside of you, and you're like, and so you don't know how to connect with them, and you want to, you really want to, but it's like you're just kind of speechless. Because maybe you don't want to poke the bear, or you're not sure how to anymore. I mean, if you're like me, you raised a child for 10 years and you kind of knew what that was like, and you knew what to say and what worked and what didn't. And so you had a rhythm, you kind of knew, and you knew them, and you knew how to deal with them and get them to listen and do what it was you're asking. And now you have a teen and you're like, I don't know. This sounds familiar. You are in the right place. My name is Allie Payne. I'm a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach, one of only 70 people in Canada to hold both designations. And I have been supporting parents of teens for the last 16 years to end the painful disconnection, stressful silences, and baffling blow-ups to create relationships based on trust and respect so that you can connect in the way that you want. I'm also a parent of teens, and I have raised, actually they're adults now. I'm a parent of 2 adults, and I have raised them through the teenage years and survived. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about the mindset shift that I had to make in order to actually connect with my teens. And I want you to tell me if you, maybe you relate to this. I mean, I don't know how many of you relate to this. Now you were raising a child, right? And now they're a teen. So puberty hit at some point, right? And all the things that used to work with your child, to connect with them, to just have easy, easy breezy conversations and, laughter, joking, or things they used to find funny. Little inside jokes even that you used to have with your teen that you held as cherished things, those don't work anymore. What happened? They don't work anymore, right? And so now you find yourself with your teenager and they're in your face, or they're doing something choice or whatever, and you find yourself standing there going, you're just staring at them and you have no idea how to respond, what to say, and so you feel stuck. You feel like you're and nothing will come out. Does anybody else relate to this? Type yes in the comments if you relate to this. You just don't know how to respond or know what to say. And so it's kind of frustrating because you need to say something, but all the things that you learned to say before that were just easier, right? Yeah, if only, right? So how many times have you actually wanted to feel like Dr. Phil? What if we could all be Dr. Phil? Because why? Because Dr. Phil has a PhD. Dr. Phil, he knows exactly what to say, right? How to say it. It sounds good and it works. Yeah, when your teen is in an awful mood or a bad mood, for sure. And so Dr. Phil just come on, he always knows what to say. He knows what to say. He knows how to cut through people's bullshit and be no. And they listen to him. They respect him, even if they're mad at him. Have you noticed that? Even if they're pissed at what he's saying, they hear him and they respect him, and he just knows what to say. Wouldn't that be awesome? If as a parent, you just had Dr. Phil's Dr. Phil's brain, that would make things a whole lot easier. But instead, in those hard or awkward moments with your teenager, we just stand there and just are because you just don't know what to say. I totally get it. And it's not that you're not trying to connect with your teen, and it's not that you don't care or love about it. It's just you've never done this before. You've never done this before. So having the exact firm and kind words, because Dr. Phil is firm, right? Firm and kind words that reach your teenager, like those magical, it reaches their brain, and actually creates the change that you're looking for, or gets the response you're looking for. Those words are not on the tip of your tongue. Huh? Right. Yeah. Well, hi, my name is Allie. I can relate to this. So wouldn't it be great, like, if you just had like a reference book? I mean, seriously, if you just had a reference book in your head, that just instantly, it like, and it was like software, right? And it just kept updating. What if you got a software in, like, okay, if you just instantly knew the magical words that were all based on recent psychology and parenting studies. I mean, if that's possible, please just sign me up. Just sign me up right now. Put my name on whatever listed. Just sign me up for whatever AI that is. Can you imagine if there was like a chat GPT AI for what to say as a parent? Woohoo! And it actually worked? That's a hell yeah. So if you had a reference book that was actually in your head, and oh yes, what if as a parent, the moment you became a parent, you had this software install, right? And it magically updated every single time your child went through a different stage in their lives. This software just magically updated so that you just always had the right words. You just always had the right language. I mean, that would be sweet. It's probably not going to happen anytime soon, but that would be amazing. So there you are in a moment of conflict or hard conversation with your teen, and your brain, instead, it just goes blank. It just goes blank, right? So instead of being Dr. Phil, because we all would just love to know what Dr. Phil knows and just have all that, tell me if this sounds familiar. Your brain goes completely blank, and you end up feeling more like Marge from The Simpsons, or like Kitty from that 70s show, where what you say sounds like Marge or Kitty, like really kind of wishy-washy, and your teen doesn't really listen, and they don't take you seriously, and you're not trying to be mean, but your like resentment is building, and then you're like grumbling through gritted teeth, or you're close to losing your shit because what you're saying isn't landing, and you're like, this isn't good. You know, like Marge and Kitty are very like that, right? And I mean, hello, if that also sounds familiar to you. So here's the number one thing. Here's the mindset shift. I promise you, that's getting in the way. And this is so true for me. You're afraid of getting it wrong. Your fear of your teen not liking you, or your fear of repeating old generational patterns, your fear of conflict. Oh, if you have a fear of conflict, type a me in the comments. Just type me. Your fear of conflict is actually getting in the way of even attempting to say what you need to say or want to say. Because let's face it, right? Parenting a teen, it's explosive. There's like baffling blow-ups, and they go from like 0 to like a hurricane, like a category 5 hurricane, like that. And so your own fear of conflict, your fear of poking the bear or what might happen, is actually getting in the way. So you end up showing up like Marge or from The Simpsons, or Kitty from that 70s show, instead of ever even getting close to being your own version of Dr. Phil, right? Yeah. Okay, so then you're like afraid of like not getting it perfect, because there's so much pressure as being a parent, like so much pressure. And you're trying to do things differently than you were parented, but you don't have a framework to lean into. So your fear of conflict alone, your fear of conflict lowers your confidence and ends up stopping you from creating the same respect that you know is missing and you want, but you never actually get or ask for because of this fear of conflict. Like, I want to tell you right now, I mean, your teen, your teen is not going to like everything you say. They are not going to like everything that you say either way, whether you try and be nice or you try and be wishy-washy or you try and be really kind. So why not like just say what you mean, right? Why not I at least give it a shot? I mean, I know that your teen is crossing lines and you don't feel respected, but when you're afraid to draw the line, you end up begging and pleading and using wishy-washy words that are really unclear and don't have any impact. So no matter how many times you say something, nothing changes, right? Nothing changes. In fact, your teens don't take you seriously because there's often never any real consequences. So your teen actually begins to ignore you. The height of frustration, your teenager actually begins to ignore you or refuses to change because your relationship ends up lacking respect on both sides. You are lacking respect from them and they feel like they're lacking respect from you. So Dr. Phil did not wake up one day, okay, and know how to empower parents and heal families. He didn't just wake up one day. He studied for years. He raised his own son and he has decades of experience on his own show, okay? So here's the thing that I had to learn when I was raising my teenagers, okay? I had to just start. I just started. I started learning and actually using all of the techniques that I'd learned in decades of therapy, my coach training, research, and what I really wanted as a teen. I was a very troubled teen. I was super mouthy, angry. I was acting out in all kinds of ways. I was lying. Went from straight A's to F's and failing out. I was a hot mess. So here's the thing. I want to just acknowledge, if you grew up in a home where there was a lot of conflict, or conflict was very painful, physically painful, it was emotionally painful, type yes if this feels like you. If you were raised in an environment where conflict was frightening, it felt unsafe, and it was painful, then it makes sense that you would avoid conflict with your teenager, even when you know you need to be a little more Dr. Phil firm and a little less passive and lenient like Kitty or Marge. But the part of your brain that is entirely wired to keep you safe is avoiding the story that you have about conflict in your head that's very real. It's very real from when you were a child, right? So I just want to acknowledge and just say that to you. When I grew up, conflict was very scary. Conflict hurt. It hurt physically. It hurt emotionally. And what I learned was to be compliant and pleasing out of survival. That's what I learned. So in order to change this story for me as a parent of teens, in order to change this story, first I had to love myself in my paralyzing fear of conflict so that I could begin to heal like my little person and really be empathizing with how terrified she felt a good deal of the time, and how important it became like not to rock the boat just out of survival. And that my thinking was back when I was a child, and that wasn't what my teens were gonna do. So my thinking was stuck back from my childhood. It wasn't actually true necessarily in the present. That my belief that conflict was dangerous, I needed to acknowledge that old story so I could begin to dismantle it. I really challenged my ingrained thoughts about speaking up. Oh, this is so prevalent for women, so prevalent for girls and women. I challenged my ingrained thoughts about speaking up and asking for what I needed, because all of the crap that I've been taught that was said that was wrong, selfish, or bad. That speaking up, asking for what I wanted, saying what I needed was selfish, wrong, and bad. That meant I needed to believe that I deserved respect, and I was allowed to feel emotionally safe in relationships. And perhaps the biggest one, that just because my teenager didn't agree with what I was asking for or saying did not mean that I was wrong and I needed to back down immediately just to keep the peace. Like, seriously, when conflict, when your belief of conflict is hijacking your brain, and it actually does hijack your brain and send you into fight or flight because of your childhood experience of conflict, what if that's the exact same thing that's stopping you from engaging with your teenager and being a little more Dr. Phil? A little firmer and kinder is your own fear of conflict, right? So I needed to learn like all these techniques to help me to stay in the conversation and practice finding my words using proven tools to create understanding and build respect. So I did create the experience that I wanted in my relationship with my teen. But I needed to learn how to stay in the conversation. And was it perfect? That's a hell no. It was so not perfect. But I traded my fear of conflict for a really messy practice of consistency, and it worked. I traded my fear of conflict and not saying what I really needed to say or what my teenager really needed to hear. Oh, thank you so much. That's a wonderful compliment. Thank you. I had to trade my fear of conflict for a messy daily practice of just being consistent. And it did work. The relationship that I have with my sons, and I'm not kidding you when I say this, the relationship that I have with my sons, they're both adults now, is even better than I ever could have imagined. And I did not have a good relationship with my parents when I was young. So all I knew is that I desperately wanted my kids to have a different experience, and I needed to have a different experience with them. Not because my parents are bad, but because no one taught them this either, right? But I didn't want to keep repeating cycles. And my relationship with them is literally so much better than what I could have imagined. They turn to me to share their highs and lows. Like today as adults, young adults, they turn to me to share their highs and lows. They ask me for input on challenges and choices in their life. We have awkward and meaningful conversations, and we can easily share a laugh. And we understand what it means to respect each other, even when we don't agree. And we know we both have skin in the game. So our relationship isn't one-sided. It's not like I'm completely laying over and being a doormat so they feel respected, or they feel like hugely controlled and disrespected because they have to be compliant and do what I say, but they're not feeling respected. It's not either one. We also had way less arguments. We had way less arguments in their later teen years because we also had way less need for consequences. So we had more time for just living. And that was all because I chose to look at my fear of conflict and somehow this weird expectation that when I did say something that was firm, that I needed to say that I deserved respect, that my teenager doesn't always agree, but just because they don't agree doesn't mean it was going to be conflict. Okay? So you don't need to have a PhD like Dr. Phil to have the specific words and phrases to use with your teen to create the relationship that you want with less conflict or control, more calm and confidence, and have the connection, those moments of day-to-day connection that you actually want. Like authentic mutual respect, right? And day-to-day connection. My proven 3-step framework and professional daily support is actually what you need to create this confidence. It's what I learned in decades of therapy and training. When I say decades of therapy, I mean decades of therapy. Like I was raised in my experience, it was a very toxic environment. I tried to take my life when I was 17. I went from straight A's to F's, failing out. I tried drugs. I was drinking every weekend. I had an eating disorder for 14 years. I mean decades of therapy. Decades. So what I started to do is I started to actually implement what I learned in decades of training and therapy. I tested this on my own sons. Like people ask me, like, where have you been? Like, I needed your information. I'm like, dude, I was figuring it out. I was putting into practice every single day what I had learned instead of deciding to be so afraid that I was repeating the same cycles that I swore I never would. I was either stop this trying to be like snap back parenting, like either fully like controlling and firm and do as I say, like authoritarian so that I felt safe. I felt safe because there was no conflict. Like, oh, thank you. Or this completely lenient, passive, like wishy-washy parenting because I like somehow either one of those was going to avoid conflict. Either like be completely authoritarian so there's no room for conflict, or be all wishy-washy so that they like me and I'm their friend. It's not either one of those. It's not either one of those. It's very traumatic when children are watching their parents fight or absolutely not fight. It can be both, okay? So I tested everything that I learned on my sons, and I am happy to say even they report what they're grateful for about my parenting. They both actually say I was very strict and firm, but I was also flexible and compassionate. And that's interesting. That's their feedback that I have specifically asked them for. So what I learned in my 3-step framework is also exactly what I've shared with thousands of parents of teens just like you, to end that painful disconnection and these constant blow-ups and this flip-flop parenting that is all based on fear of conflict. But neither one actually avoids conflict because you're not actually getting the connection that you want, right? So you can build a relationship with your teen where you have less conflict and like without all the yelling. And it's a messy daily practice of not being like wishy-washy, but you also don't have to be Dr. Phil. There's like a middle ground. And you can use my proven 3-step framework that is all science-backed. Here's what some other parents have said when they've used my framework. Instead of getting mad and punishing him, we learn to connect. We learn to connect and correct. This was the turning point. Another mom said, changing our behavior changed his behavior. That's pretty powerful, right? Another parent said, I'm not afraid anymore to clearly state my boundaries when my teen oversteps. Can you imagine not being afraid because you have proven scripts? So you can like get the Dr. Phil software in your head, right? Another parent said, I'm better able to let go of my fear and focus on parenting my teen in the present moment. It is possible. I promise you it's possible. Thank you for joining me today. My signature program is opening again. Registration is opening again on April 3rd. That's next Monday. If you're interested in taking this fear of conflict from perhaps your past and churning it into a daily messy practice of actually creating what it is that you say you want, which, by the way, I know your teenager actually wants and appreciates too, because they message me. Just tap on my name, and then there is a link in my profile, and join the wait list, and you'll be notified immediately when registration opens for April 3rd. And you can be like those parents who are less afraid to say what needs to be said, and not allowing this fear and this need to keep the peace, or being so afraid to poke the bear that you're missing out on the connection that you actually want with your teen. So so tap my name, then the link in my profile, and make sure you join the waitlist for April 3rd. Thanks for joining me, everybody.